Welcome everyone to another session. Okay, so today we are still going to keep talking about some of the concept. Now we are dealing with multiple tables. Okay, and there are a couple of things beside what we've talked about that we still need to bear in mind so that we can confidently be able to deal with connecting two or more tables together without affecting the data integrity. All right, so today we're going to be looking at cardinality. Okay, cardinality, and what do we mean by cardinality? Okay, so here we are basically referring to um, instances of one entity table relating to another instance of another table. So essentially, we are saying that let's say we have two tables, right? If you look at an instance or a record of a table and a record of another table, how are they related to one another, right? And with that, we have three different types. Okay, first of all, we have uh, we have the one to one. Okay, we have to one, right? And also we also have the one to many, okay? And then we have the many to many. All right, and what does one to one means? It simply says that each row in table A, let's say we have table A and table 2, so each row in table A relate to only one row in table B. So at that point we are saying that they are one to one. Now we are looking at the common key. Let's say you can take table A as having a primary key and table B as having a foreign key, and if you don't know the difference, we've discussed in a previous session, feel free to explore and take advantage of that. Now, so once we look at it like that, and then in this foreign key we're talking about is also unique on that key, right? That means that there is no duplicate record there. So at that point, we'll say it's one to one relationship. And then one to many here, it's basically saying that table A has unique record, table B, the key have more duplicate record. At that point, we'll say one is related to many in another table. Many to many means that records in table A relate to multiple rows in table B. Now, let's quickly go to some of the examples we can use to illustrate this concept. Okay, now when you look at this particular table here, this is a product table. We've seen that a couple of our previous session. And then you look at another table here, right? You can see that if you take a look at this product key, you will see that it's unique in each record, right? The same thing here is unique in each record, right? And so when you connect these two together, this is what we call one-to-one relationship. Now, practically, when do you need to do this, right? So practically, what happens is when you have one-to-one, depending on the use case. So if the tables are not wide, meaning that let's say they are less than 20 columns. Let's say this table is less than 20 columns, okay, and this one also is like 10 columns, right? Now it kind of makes sense in some cases to be able to combine the two together. So there is no need to have multiple tables when they are just one to one. You can just combine both table together, and at that point you will have 30 columns in one table, right? We're going to see a demo afterwards. Now, but there are some other use cases where you don't want to combine the two because you want to empower easy data discovery, right? Say for example, this, let me just erase that quickly. Let's say for example, this table now has 500 columns, right? And this table has, let's say, 200 columns, right? Now, though we can join them together, and then we would, if we are to join them, we will have 700 columns. Now, when you look at this, practically it's possible, but business why it doesn't make sense. Say for example, we need one attribute out of the 700 attribute, then we have to go through the 700 for also identify one attribute we need for our work. So you can see it's going to be a lot of work to be able to discover data. For that purpose, it makes sense to leave this table separately. In fact, 500 is a very wide table. Usually you want to keep it less than at least 100 or so, so that way it's easy for people to really be able to use the data for various purposes. Okay, now that's just all about the one-to-one. Let's quickly go to one-to-many. And one-to-many is just basically saying here that we have unique record here, but yeah, it's more or less like a foreign key, and so we have some duplicates here. You can see 771 appears here, 771 appears here, 772 appear here, 772 appear here. Now this is the recommended one, right? So it's recommended uh modeling, right? So this is what we usually recommend, right? The reason is that it does make sense, right? Like, if you look at a company, for example, their product would usually be unique. When you look at a company and it has a product, it should be unique. And when you look at a fact table, right, and this we expect that there will be duplicate. I can have customers have multiple of the same product but multiple instances of that same product. That's possible, so this makes sense business wise. And also when you do it technically, joining either a left join or inner join, it makes sense, and we can deal with that accordingly because that's what we expect. So if you have opportunity and you're designing a table or a model, you want to make sure that you prioritize one to many. But there are instances where that is not the case, like I mentioned in one to one. And the last one here is many to many, and like you can guess as well, so in this case that means we have duplicate record for some of these keys here, and then we also have duplicate record. And in that instance, when we join both of them together here, we would, using the product key, we will say it's many to many, right? Meaning that many record here, it's connected to many record here. This is usually not recommended, I would say. So we don't recommend this type of join, but there are some real life use cases that you really can't help it, but you just have to deal with it. But the good thing here is that I want you guys to be empowered such a way that you understand the table you are dealing with, so that when you are designing a data product or performing your analysis, you factor all of that into place, and then you can confidently um, design a very good product with the integrity of the data intact. Okay, now that we've gone through all of this, let's quickly look at some demo, and that way we can see it in action. Okay, now I've gone ahead to create some additional sample data, so such that we can be able to see some of this concept in our lab. Okay, now let's quickly start with the one-to-one, and let's first see the table that represent one-to-one. So we'll use the product sample. So let's say sample product, we drop that in here. Let's have a look. We can see it represent, we can see each record is unique. So this, in this case, it is one record unique per each per for this particular table. All right, so let's comment that out. We still need this, guys, so we're gonna copy that, and then we're gonna dump it here. We just drop it right there. And then what we're then gonna do right here is that we're then gonna also drop in the second one, which is the sample product, right? So we're gonna also drop that in. Just give me a second. Okay, yeah, I found it. Now we're gonna drop this product detail right here, and then you're gonna run that. You can also see, even though this one has UPC and add additional attribute, but you can see that at this point the record is unique. And so let's join both of them and see what we get. Okay, now let's comment these out, and then we're just gonna do an inner join. Okay, so let's say we'll have this, and then we'll do a join, and then we'll just drop in this product detail, and we can call this P, and then we just call this PD, and then just to make it look really nice, let's format it correctly. Okay, beautiful. And then we need to have the on and say p.pro.key. I'm just gonna drop that from here. Let's look at the columns, and then we just drop that right here. And also we'll say equals to, and say pd.pro.key as well, pro.id. All right, so let's run that. We should have, you see, we have four records, so we should still have four records but more attributes. So you can see we have all of our attributes from the sample product, and then the product detail as well. We have all of our record. No record was dropped because it's one-to-one, and that's why I kind of mentioned to you that you can basically combine both together. In some cases it doesn't make sense to have um, two tables when you have one-to-one relationship, but in some other cases it makes sense to have. All right, now that's one-to-one relationship. All right, so let's go to the second one here, and that's one-to-many. All right, one-to-many, and we're gonna still use our sample product here, and let's copy this again. Let's take a look at the data quickly, and let's run that. Now, beautiful, we have our data, and then let's also take a look at a new table called sample sales many. Okay, and then we will say let's copy this again, and then comment it out, and then we just kind of drop that in here. Okay, so let's drop that in here, and then we run that, right? And look, you can see 771 is appearing twice, 772 is appearing twice. At this point we'll say this is many table, because we have many duplicate records, or more than two or more records in product ID, which is a key we are using to connect these two tables. All right, so let's do a connection here, and then we'll see what we can do with this particular two data. All right, so let's run this again, and then let's join both of them together. In this case, we're going to use a lapped join so we can actually see the data. So we use lapped join with this sales many. Okay, and we copy that, we drop that in. We can call this P as well, and then we call this SM, and then we'll do the same thing on p.pro.id. okay, and equals to sm.pro.id as well, and then we kind of run that, and look, you can see what's going on now. Even though our sample product is unique, when you combine with many, then you see that the record has increased. We had 4 records before, now we have 6, because now we have duplicates 771 771. Now this makes sense, right? That tells us that now we have a purchase of 1 quantity, another purchase of 3 quantity, because this is a sales table. What we can do with this at this point, and this is why it's important to understand this concept, is that if you really don't want to have duplicate, and you want unique, you want it to be unique at the product level, right? It then makes sense at this point to say, let's say we want to find the total quantity, right? And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna have the group by. All right, and then with the group by, we'll just say what we want is product ID, product name, product number. We don't really need these sales order detail ID, so we're going to leave that out. And then we want our order quantity, the sum of it, right? So for example, 771, we expect it to be 1 plus 3, which is going to be 4. 772, we expect to be 1 plus 1, which is going to be 2. All right, so let's quickly do that. Now, for clarity, we're going to bring in all the let me pull the sample products, and we're going to bring in all the individual column. Okay, and then we have the product ID. We say p dot again, product name, and then also we have another one. We'll say product number. All right, so now, and then we then have the last one here. We'll now say total sum of order quantity, right? So order quantity, and then we would say as total quantity. Okay, all right, now then we will now say group by 1, 2 and 3, right? And then we run that. Okay, beautiful. You can see now 771 is 4, 772 is 2. That's what we expect. Now we're gonna copy this. Okay, let's leave that. I hope you now understand, the reason why we actually need to take cognizance of the cardinality. Okay, I'm actually going to copy this to the Excel file. Okay, just give me 1 second here. Okay, now we have an Excel file. We're gonna say one to many. We're gonna need it very soon. That's why I want to copy it. And then, let's copy again. When you are copying, just make sure that you indicate copy with headers. Very key. So we copy, and then we'll paste right here. Beautiful, and then you can just format accordingly. Beautiful, and take note of these two, which is color them, we highlight them as yellow. That's great. And now at this point we can stop here for the one to many. All right, I believe it's really clear. Now let's go to the last one, which is many to many, right? And for this one, we're still going to use this sales many. Okay, I'm gonna run that again to refresh our memory, and you can see we have many, like we have more than 1771, more than 1772, and here we're then also going to we have another table that I have gone ahead to create, and I'm gonna make the code available so you guys can also follow along. Okay, and then it's called sample product many. So we're gonna drop that here, sample product many, and I want you guys to take a look, and you can see also at this level you have two 771 product. One key thing to take note here is that 771 is now representing month-end receiver 38 and also 39, and you can see the product number also 38 and 39. Now this is where it's challenging to deal with many to many, because at this point 771, what would you say is representing? Now we can't tell exactly, right? We could say 38 or 39, right? So that's why you just have to be careful when you need to deal with many to many to make sure that you're dealing with it correctly. Okay, now that we've seen both, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna copy. Actually, we're gonna just leave the sample product many, and then we're gonna just do a left join. Okay, and then to the other one, and we'll see what the data looks like. Okay, so when we join, let's quickly join, do a left join, and then we call this SM, and then we call this P. We can just leave this as P. Okay, and then we'll say on, and we're still going to use our product. I'm just going to copy what we had used before, and we'll drop it right here, and then we'll run it. Now you can see there's a lot of duplicate. Now we have 10 records. You see what's going on because of the many to many relationship. Now one thing you will take note here is that you see it's duplicating 771 for 38. It's also duplicating 771 for 39, right? The same thing for 772 as well. For 42 is duplicating it. 772 is also duplicating for 43. So you have to pay attention. Okay, you really have to pay attention. Okay, now let's try to group by just like what we did in one to many, and then we'll now compare, and you see where, if you don't deal with it correctly, you can have some data quality issues. Okay, so let's quickly do that. So I'm gonna copy everything we have here because it's very similar, and we're gonna do a group by. Okay, and let's do that quickly, and then we're just gonna copy this as well, group by 1 2 3, and then we're gonna run that. Now you can see at this point we now have 772 twice. Now let's copy this, okay, and let's go back to that Excel that we had. Now we say many to many, and then I drop the file right here. Okay, now one thing I want you to take note is, if you look at 771 is 4 here, right? And also 771 is 4. Now the challenge here is that if you're not careful, you might, if you group by product ID alone, there is tendency that this might be aggregated to 8, which is not exactly the quantity that the customer or the customer purchased, which is the quantity purchased actually 4. But in this case, because of many to many relationship, we can affect the quality of the data. The same thing with 772 here. You can see each one is saying 2 2, but however the actual quantity here is 2. If we group by just without the product name or product number, just the product ID, we might aggregate to 4, and then 4 is not exactly the quantity that the customer purchased, but just 2. Now this is why it's very key to know your cardinality and to bear this in mind when you are dealing with multiple tables. That ensures that your data, when you deal with it correctly, you can ensure that you have good data quality, okay, and the integrity of your data is actually preserved. All right, I hope this is helpful to you. This is really fun for me to prepare for you, and I know it's really important. I've seen people in the industry make errors because they don't understand some of these key concepts. And guys, I just want to empower you to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful out there. All right. At this point, thank you so much for watching. And the next time we're going to go back to our use case. I know you're excited about that. I look forward to having you in that session as well. Various use cases where we can then begin to put some of these concepts we've learned for the past 2 days into actions. Thank you again for watching and listening, and I will see you in the next session.